Was it one bad night or a preview of where this Nebraska football season is headed over the next 6 weeks? We have thoughts.
You are Locked On Nebraska, your daily Nebraska Cornhuskers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, and thanks for making Locked On Nebraska your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you will get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Download FanDuel today.
All right, welcome. It is Monday here on the Locked On Nebraska podcast. I'm Connor Happer, and I have returned to the podcast. Mitch Sherman is here as well.
Welcome back.
Yeah, so Mitch, I think I'm just going to talk for 30 minutes here about my thoughts on the game, and you could listen if you want. You got a front row seat. Congratulations.
That's what I did yesterday. You probably saw or heard about my attempt to do a solo podcast. If you made it through that and you came back and you're actually watching or listening today, thank you. I don't know how that went. I felt like I was just talking into the abyss. It was very odd. I didn't have anyone to bounce ideas off, and it just was like I was thinking to myself as I just kept talking and talking and talking, which really isn't all that much different than normal. I just talk and talk and talk, but like it felt
It's weird.
odd. I don't know how to do that, but whatever. We made it through. There are more pressing things, like the fact that Nebraska's 5-2 and coming off of a 3-score loss at Minnesota as Northwestern and its tremendous defense gets ready to head to Lincoln.
Not pretty. It was
not.
That was so yeah, I guess I watched the game. I mean, I knew how it went on Friday night, but I was at a wedding and I was relatively secluded from the situation, and I didn't watch it in full until very, very early Sunday morning on an airplane. And so I jotted a couple things down and whatever, but so I guess I knew, just for context, I knew kind of how it happened, and what some of the talking points were before I really watched the game, and a lot of stuff was confirmed. I mean, I did not see that coming, as Matt Rhule said after the game. I mean, and there was a point. I mean, I think they got kind of finished off a little bit at the end of at halfway through the fourth quarter, but all the way until probably that point, 14-6, and then the next touchdown after that, I kind of thought, well, I think they got a touchdown in them. Like, I think they could find one here and be able to get back in this thing, and it's just going to kind of take a play. And every time they had that window, they missed. Dylan Raiola missing a couple deep balls, and there was a tough flag, a tough non-penalty call in there on a Minnesota play during the game, right? So there's a world where that game doesn't look as bad as it does, but it was certainly uncharacteristic from what we've seen so far this year.
I kept waiting for Nebraska to wake up and thinking that it was going to happen until the 98-yard drive, and then I just kind of knew it was over. Even though it was still a 1-score game after that drive, I could see that this was not Nebraska's night. And there have been times this season, in the last 2 games, especially the 2 games before that, where I also thought that this is just not Nebraska's day. And then the Huskers did come back, but they had more life in the Michigan State and Maryland games. There was just an odd lack of life for Nebraska. And I talked about this some on the Sunday show. I felt like I could see it before the game. And I don't know if that's hindsight speaking now. I just didn't feel like, I felt like they were kind of going through the motions, and there wasn't a lot of noise. There wasn't a lot of energy. There didn't seem to be a big light in their eyes, which is a cliche, but it's kind of hard to explain. And the game started, and we'll talk about this later, but their offensive game plan seemed to be uninspiring. I'm not sure what they were trying to do. So I had a real sense when it was 14-6 after that long drive that they had been broken, and it was there was not going to be a fourth quarter comeback.
I kind of held out hope still. even after that. So maybe that was and there was no need for me to, because I knew exactly how it was going to end and
right.
what,
You
and
knew
what
the
was
outcome.
right.
You were holding out hope, even though you knew the final score.
How were they not able to put anything together? And they really truly weren't. They weren't able to put anything really together offensively all night. They had 2 good drives that both ended up in field goals. I think that hurts. I mean, so you look at their first 4 possessions, Nebraska's first 4 possessions of the game. And, Mitch, you said you were going to talk about this later, but like, I really think there is something to be said about the way that they started that game. Maybe it turns out a little bit differently, or at least the energy is different if they get a couple first downs on that first drive. They get it right away. They throw it. They get a few yards on an RPO to the outside, and then they don't go anywhere else. They throw 3 passes, and I just felt like that really set a tone in the game. And basically, not from there, you were playing catch up, because Minnesota didn't get their first touchdown until the big run by Taylor. But it just felt like they were trying to, catch up in a metaphorical way after their first 2 or 3 possessions, where they only get 2 field goals in 4 possessions, and it felt like it could have been a whole hell of a lot more after that. I don't know if running the ball guarantees that they get them touchdowns, but Emmett was running really well, I thought. And
he had a couple of really nice runs.
Yeah,
he's now leading the Big Ten in rushing, and I felt like, and I think he'll say this on Tuesday when we hear from Dana Holgorsen, I felt like it was the worst we've seen from Nebraska, from Holgorsen and the offensive game plan. And that's easy to say when they don't score a touchdown.
It was just overthought.
Overthinking it.
Yeah.
I think that Nebraska and Holgorsen expected Minnesota to believe that Nebraska was going to lean on Emmett. It's like, this is the expectation from Minnesota in Nebraska's eyes would be, this is going to be the Emmett Johnson game. We're going to feed him the ball. Look at what he did last week. He's coming home. So Nebraska then diverted from that and said, no, we're going to do something else to catch you off guard, which is the clinical definition of overthinking it.
Yeah. At some point you just got to play, but I guess there comes a fascinating discussion inside that as well for me, because, you would just say in that situation, well, just be who you are. And then you, of course, have to answer the question, who are you? So I don't know that we have an answer to that. I think Nebraska has a lot of different options on what they could be. This is one of the things that I talked about before the season. And what do you know? Nebraska loses, by the way. We're having a conversation about identity. But, I said it like,
seems too easy. Seems too easy. We always go back to that. But it's true.
You have these options. I think Nebraska's wide receivers have proven that those guys are really good players. I think their running back's pretty good. I think their quarterback is pretty good. I think their offensive line, those 2 tackles, 3 got, eaten alive, by some stuff that Minnesota was doing to them on, obviously 9 sacks. That's really tough, but theoretically Nebraska should have a pretty solid offense, and maybe it's just that they have too many options. You gotta figure out, you gotta pick a path, I think, and they're at that kind of crossroads right now with less than half of the season to go.
So let's look at that. Let's look at, I said on the Sunday show that I would save this for our Monday podcast before Matt Rhule talks. So Rhule will be talking today, midday, and then we'll hear from Nebraska players and assistant coaches tomorrow. By the way, 11 a.m. for the kickoff Saturday on FS1 as Northwestern comes to Lincoln. That was announced Sunday midday. So Nebraska's 5-2. It has Northwestern, which beat Purdue 19-0 on Saturday. The Cats are having one of those Northwestern seasons where nothing is expected, and you look up and they're bowl eligible in the middle of the year, and everybody's talking about how amazing Northwestern is. This was 2 years ago in David Braun's first season, after the bizarre turn of events that led him to become the head coach in July, and nothing was expected of Northwestern. It went and had a somewhat magical season, and then there were expectations on Northwestern a year ago, and it all went the wrong way. It is a tested over and over formula. When you don't expect things of Northwestern, it is good. And this is one of those years. So this is by no means a walkover. Somehow Nebraska is a 9.5-point favorite for this home game on Saturday. What do you think about that?
I think that makes some sense.
This is an emotional reaction from me for sure to say that like Northwestern should be favored or Nebraska should be a 2-point favorite. But if you look at the last couple of weeks of football, or at least this last week of football, I have a hard time picking Nebraska to win this one by more than one score.
Yeah. To be clear, I thought Minnesota was too many points. They were up to 9.5 at one point in that as well for a road game. I thought that was probably too many, but I get it. I understand it. I mean, this is all how they come up with these numbers is based on a formula. And, I think you'll see probably some action on this game to move it one way or the other throughout the week. And
may have already moved. That was yesterday. Yeah.
I don't think that we could have a larger discussion about this, but I don't believe that this will be like some sort of, it shouldn't be some sort of back-breaking moment for Nebraska's season. It's a bad loss, and we're going to talk about why it happened and all that stuff. But I don't know. I'm glad I'm jumping in now when people have some distance from it, because people don't, I'm usually like all right, let's chill out one way or the other guy. And they don't want to hear that like immediately after games. So maybe right now is the perfect time for me. Like, I think everything is, Nebraska's going to be okay. They're going to figure out some things. They still have to continue to figure out some things. They're going to figure out why they can't beat Minnesota, and Minnesota beats them every year. They love beating Nebraska, clearly. So that's
good at it.
To figure out. They're really, really good at it. And so is Nebraska going to go 5-7? No. Is Nebraska going to go 6-6? No, I don't think so. There's some wins out there left for Nebraska.
That was the conversation last year at this time after Nebraska lost to Indiana in the same spot. And I would argue that this Minnesota game was in some ways worse than the Indiana game, because that was a team that, as we saw, was headed toward an undefeated regular season and in the college football playoff. That is not Minnesota. So, and the other bad loss, or blowout, so to speak, that Nebraska had in the Matt Rhule era was the year before that against Michigan, when it was 34-3. That was the national champion that season. So I am on board in believing this is the worst loss of the Matt Rhule era, to lose by that margin. I get it. It was 7-6 midway through the third quarter, but 24-6 at the end and beaten the way that Nebraska was beaten. That's not a close game. It wasn't down to the end by any stretch.
No, it definitely wasn't.
Yeah. You got 3 of those, and the other 2 came against some of the best teams in the country.
Big stinker.
This is not that. This is not what Minnesota is. I think when this thing plays out, Minnesota is going to be a 7-win team or something like that. So maybe an 8-win team. But let's take a break, come back. We'll shift gears a bit and talk about what was going on specifically with the Nebraska offense. And then at the end of the show, we'll get more back into that schedule and how we think things are going to play out for Nebraska the rest of the season. Coming up next on the Locked On Nebraska podcast.
But first, a word from our friends at the FanDuel Sportsbook. The NFL season rolls on strong, and FanDuel is making sure that you are ready for, let's say, a Monday night kickoff with the FanDuel Sportsbook. Doubleheader again tonight in the NFL. Bucks, Lions, Texans, Seahawks. There's so many options available for you just in those 2 games. Futures included as well. So, by the way, right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if that bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. So think about those games that you have tonight. Maybe it's something involving Baker Mayfield, who's increasingly becoming everybody's favorite NFL player, including my own. So check that out on FanDuel. Very, very easy, and it's the best way to add a little bit more energies to your Monday night doubleheaders, or, of course, your Sunday afternoons as well. Download FanDuel today. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. FanDuel.com and place that first $5 bet right now.
And I'll take a moment right now to tell you about Quo. One of the tools that makes a huge difference for business owners is Quo, formerly known as Open Phone. It is the same great business phone system that you've heard me talk about before, just with a new name. And here's why it matters. Every missed call is money left on the table. When every conversation counts with the customer, you need a phone system that keeps you connected 24/7. Quo is the #1 business phone system that streamlines customer communications. It works right through an app on your phone or your computer. So there's no more carrying around two phones. Who does that anymore? Or relying on a landline. Quo's built-in AI agent is a game changer. It can answer after-hour calls, capture leads, keep business moving, even when you're off the clock. So see why over 90,000 businesses trust Quo, formerly Open Phone. Get started free and get 20% off the first 6 months, your first 6 months at quo.com/lockedoncollege. That's QUO.com/lockedoncollege. And if you've got existing numbers with another service, Quo will port them over at no extra charge. Quo, no missed calls, no missed customers. All right, welcome back. Monday episode of the Locked On Nebraska podcast. Connor Happer, Mitch Sherman, reunited here. We are back. We will be with you all week ahead of Nebraska Northwestern. Maybe a guest that we'll have join the two of us midweek or so. Working on that right now. So keep our fingers crossed. Quickly, because it was an exhibition game, we will only spend a minute on it, but it demands our attention because Nebraska basketball beat BYU, number 8 ranked BYU, 90-89. I will tell you this, the best part of my trip, sadly, because I didn't need any great food. It was like it was a drive on Friday morning and I drove back Saturday morning. So I was eating at like Culver's and Jimmy John's. I did have some good Raisin Canes on campus. Very, very healthy stuff after the game on late Saturday night. I didn't get into there. So the highlight of my trip was obviously not the game. It was listening to Kent Pavelka on the drive back call the Nebraska BYU game, because if you would have just been implanted into my car at that moment, you would have thought this game was occurring in the second round of the NCAA tournament. Kent was awesome. Four got it on repeat after like the 38th three-pointer that Rink Mast hit on Saturday afternoon. It was so entertaining, so great. Thank you for taking 2 hours and making it a lot of fun. Kent and his new partner, Jeff Smith. Yeah, that's so good. It's so good because first of all, Rick Mast, how about that? He makes every shot he takes, and then I love the BYU coach after the game. BYU has a potential number 1 overall pick, AJ DeBanza. He has a good game. He has some mistakes. It's his very first college exhibition game, and he goes up afterwards and he's like, "I think they should draft Rick Mast first." And I'm like, "It's amazing! What a great time! Great start to the season for Nebraska." A year from now, when Rink Mast is playing Euroball in like the Czech Republic or something like that, he can remember the fact that the BYU coach, who's a former longtime NBA assistant coach, said that he should have gone 1-1 in the draft. He can tell that to his teammates overseas. Yeah, DeBanza, Nebraska held in quotation marks to 30 at BBA on Saturday. Maybe one of his lower scoring outputs as DeBanza goes through the Big 12 this year. He's from the sounds of it on the radio, he's an electric player. I saw a couple of highlights. Pavelka also was giving it to DeBanza. It's the first game. It's his first game ever, and he I guess was jawing a little bit with the Nebraska students. You can imagine that whoever was there in the student section was probably deserved it, saying whatever they were saying to the number 1 recruit in the country. And Pavelka crowned him. He should be on the all cocky team for coming out in game 1 and having the gall to like respond or wave or something like that at the Nebraska students. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. And people around here get disappointed when basketball comes back. How dare they? This is exactly what I need in my life. This is fantastic. I needed it on Saturday. I turned the radio dial away from college football, listened to College Game Day, listened to Nick Saban tee off on Penn State on College Game Day. And then I listened to some hoops after like an hour of LSU Vanderbilt. So the drive home was entertaining. So Florida fired Billy Napier after he beat Mississippi State. That's over in Gainesville. Second SEC job to open. As you know, there are 2 Big Ten jobs open, UCLA and Penn State, both on Nebraska's remaining schedule. And now Colorado State is open. Jay Norvell, the former Nebraska offensive coordinator, was let go on Sunday. Wisconsin is not open. And you have like NBA Twitter weighing in on this, saying that all is fine. Some guy who I guess must have a connection to the Wisconsin program, maybe an alum or something like that, who's an NBA media, was saying that Chris McIntosh, the AD at Wisconsin, and Luke Fickell have been having discussions about how to move this thing forward in the future, and all is apparently on track in Madison. It's like, really? Because really? I mean, are you serious? Because McIntosh should not be making the decisions. I don't know. They got issues there if that's the case. Something needs to change for the Badgers.
Yeah. Okay. And then Mike Norvell, he's still employed by Florida State.
He is.
But we'll see how long
being, along with Tony White and Gus Malzahn, his highly paid coordinators.
All right. Back to football. We're gonna talk plenty about whatever side it is. But Mitch, I said in the first segment, I just felt like Nebraska started that game really, really questionably with the play calling, and that it was a consistent thing that kind of popped up throughout the remainder of the game. I just thought like those two ends were just killing Nebraska's tackles. Smith and Carter Menz, they were just smoking those guys all night long. They were in track stances, running right by him. It was the same thing that Michigan did. I felt like they watched the Michigan game 400 times and they were like, we could do that, So they got to get, when that happens, they need to. Nebraska's offense needs to be a little bit more malleable. Get them out moving, get them out on the run. Because Dylan Raiola made some great plays in the run the first half of that game. This was a Dylan Raiola in the bag game that's going to get forgot about. He missed a couple throws, obviously, but boy, he was making some during that game as well.
Sadly, that's all that Nebraska was getting from its offense was when Dylan had to improvise.
Yeah.
This is the opposite of the way they envisioned it. They didn't want Dylan to have to be that player who made the unbelievable plays. The only thing that Nebraska got offensively, other than a couple of nice runs by Emmett Johnson, was Dylan Raiola improvising, running like crazy to avoid a sack once he hits Luke Lindenmeyer on a mid-range to deep pass that was just threaded. And then of course he had the play where he's falling down and uses his left hand to hold himself off the ground in very Mahomesian fashion and flips it to Isaiah Hunter. And the third one was the ridiculous left-handed throw that Dylan made as the pass rush came in on his right side. That's not the picture of this offense. That is not what this offense is supposed to be. They don't want Dylan to have to make those plays in order to kick 2 field goals, and that's it. So it went off the rails in a bad way. I want to talk about and ask you what you think about the fact that now it's somewhat of a trend for Dane Key to get taken. We saw he made the game-winning catch just a week ago against Maryland. Like, give him his credit for that for sure. But it seems that Big Ten defenses have an ability for long stretches of time to take him away. And the same thing with Ja'Cory Barney. I think Isaiah Hunter, like, he can make his own plays. He dropped a pass in the fourth quarter that should have been at minimum a long game, maybe a touchdown. I believe that was when it was 14-6. So it could have been a huge play in the game. He has the ability to run himself open. You'd think that Barney and Key would have some of that too, but we're not seeing that from Nebraska's like wide receiver 1A and 1B.
Yeah, I think out of the three, Hunter has the ability, if he's getting covered downfield, like Hunter has the ability to separate probably best amongst the three of them.
Yep.
Every time they throw it up to Key, it feels like he's got a guy right on him, which is fine if you could go up and make contested plays. Unfortunately, I think a couple of times in that game, Dylan didn't put it in the right spot for Key to go make contested plays. So you only get so many opportunities for that. I think Key is a really, really good player. It's just when you have that type of receiver, when you have that type of player, you got to take advantage of your opportunities when you get them. It's like what Holgorsen said before last week. He was like, "Yeah, the ball just didn't really find them." So I think Nebraska generally, from an offensive standpoint, is, I think Dana is he's an offensive coach that likes, the rhythm and the flow and kind of all that stuff. And I think at times what they need to do, if we go back to the basketball conversation, it's a wide open, take your good shots offense, right? I think at times what they need to do is call more sets, right? They need to run more plays. They need to design more opportunities to specifically get guys involved, and get guys in rhythm, specifically Dylan. So I think they could probably go. It's a constant, are we this or are we that? Do we think we could do this? Do we think and maybe they're still finding the answers to that question, but we're 7 games in, you got to know some things about yourself at this point.
The ball doesn't find great receivers. Great receivers find the ball.
That's
great receivers. Yeah. Great receivers and playmakers on offense. They make plays. It doesn't have to be necessarily schemed up for them, but in this offense, I do think Nebraska needs to look to scheme some more things for its playmakers. I know Dana coming from the Big 12, where it's so much about rhythm and pace.
Yep.
I think, and your own focusing on yourself, I think probably needs to look a little bit more at how to get the defense off balance in order to bring balance back to the offense. And he's not into gadgets. We've seen that, which is a little crazy because, he's viewed as this innovative mind with offense, but he takes offense very seriously. And I think sometimes, if you start running jet sweeps and end arounds and flea flickers and such, that doesn't fit the mold of what Dana has done. He's always been so good in his career at just being able to scheme offensive football and win without doing that kind of, silly stuff. But that might be not a lot of it, but 1 or 2 of those plays might be what it takes to get the defense off balance, to slow down the pass rush, some misdirection. Now, those plays take longer to develop in the backfield, and you don't have a lot of time to allow plays to develop in the backfield when 2 defensive ends are crashing into your quarterback 4 seconds to 3 seconds after the ball is snapped, 2 seconds, whatever it is. You know what I'm saying? You got to protect in order to run gadget plays, or you're more likely to just commit a turnover. So I don't know. It's a tough spot that he's in, but something's got to be a little bit different because now the formula is out there, and it was after the Michigan game, but it's really out there now once Minnesota, with more standard level Big Ten talent, has been able to pull this off against the Nebraska offense.
Yeah, I would add too, it's going to help your quarterback because you give him all these controls and the ability to go make these plays. About, give him a throw that he has to make. You know what I mean? He's got to either throw it, otherwise you're going to have serious problems. He'd be more likely to throw it. So I think sometimes he turns it down when he's got a good option, but could take a better option. It's like in basketball, you're trying to turn down a good shot to get a great shot, but sometimes you got to take the good shot. And he misses those sometimes.
All right, let's take a break. One more segment in this Monday podcast, and then we will get on with the week and hear from the coaches coming up next. A second right now to tell you about Monarch. Let's be honest, most of us cannot even name our financial accounts, let alone what they're worth. Between 401k savings and investments, it's easy to lose track, and that can mean leaving money on the table. This is why it makes sense to start using Monarch, an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or on your phone. It helps organize accounts, track spending, get a better handle on investments without having to touch a spreadsheet. You can review everything, see shared goals with your partner, and make better financial decisions together. Monarch's visual dashboard and smart tools make it so much easier to understand where your money is going and how to make it work for you. So do not let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarch.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarch.com, code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year.
All right, welcome back. Connor Hepper, Mitch Sherman with you. We'll hear from Matt Rhule on this Monday. We'll see what he felt like having to watch that game over again, and Nebraska will prepare for Northwestern. Like you said, Mitch, it'll be an 11 o'clock kick on Saturday.
Yeah. So after Northwestern, Nebraska, as you know, is going to face USC, which had an opportunity with a bye week here while Nebraska plays Northwestern to come into Lincoln as a ranked team. That I assume the Trojans fell out of the rankings after that loss at Notre Dame on Saturday night. I'm looking right now. USC's off this week. USC, unranked 5-2 USC this week. So Nebraska's not going to be playing unless Iowa gets into the rankings. Nebraska's not going to be playing a ranked team for the rest of the way. And that on its face, on the surface, seems to bode well for Matt Rhule and the Huskers. I'm trying to look at this team as a 7-game product and not a 4-quarter product that I just saw on Friday night. I'm as I walked out of Huntington Bank Stadium on Saturday night, that was a difficult thing to do, thinking about the remaining schedule, thinking about how Nebraska might be right back in the same spot on Black Friday at 6-5. And
maybe they will be.
I feel a little bit better. I feel a little bit better right now. I watched games on Saturday. But do I expect them to beat USC? Do I expect them to win at UCLA or Penn State? Do I think that Nebraska has the advantage against Iowa, the Iowa team that has gotten much better the last couple of weeks when the Hawks come to Memorial Stadium? Do I think that Iowa can look at what Minnesota and Michigan have done? Like, Iowa's kind of a combination of Minnesota and Michigan. Better talent, I think, on the defensive side, I know, than Minnesota. Not quite like Michigan, but will absolutely pattern its game plan after what the Gophers did. So I don't know, like on the individually, I don't see a lot of wins out there for Nebraska beyond this week. And this one is dicey at best after the way Northwestern's been playing.
Oh, I mean,
talk me off the ledge, man.
Yeah, they have a lot to figure out. I mean, that's for sure. But if you, like you said, Mitch, if you look at them as a 7-game sum of their parts product, then it's not that bad. If you're taking the 2 losses or the 1 loss, you're like, oh boy, I don't know. I don't see very many wins out there. Either way, whether it's the 7 games or the 1 game, they're going to be in close games. So
sure,
you have to think that we're going to see a better version of Nebraska that we saw in Minneapolis on Friday night against Northwestern, and Northwestern will continue to get better. And USC is like the thing that we always forget during football season is that it's not always like this. It's a lot of times like this, and hopefully you catch the right teams on the right day, and hopefully you don't catch the wrong teams on the wrong day. I think Nebraska was a bad version of itself and caught the wrong team on the wrong day on Friday night. And there you go. They lost. And a team that wanted to be, I mean, I can't emphasize that enough. They love beating Nebraska. Minnesota loves beating Nebraska. They got Malachi Coleman a catch early in that game. He started barking at everybody like that is pointed. They know exactly what they were doing. So, sure. Nebraska didn't meet the moment on Friday. It doesn't mean that they won't meet the moment the rest of the season.
We do remember that a year ago, after Nebraska looked 100% inept against Indiana on the road in this exact same spot, that it then regrouped and played possibly its best game of the year at Ohio State the next week, and nearly pulled that thing out against the eventual national champion, a team that was just blowing everybody else out a few weeks later. So you hope for that kind of an inspired effort from Nebraska, but they've talked over and over about how they don't want this. This is the difference. We heard it a lot last week. Nebraska's not playing against the opponents this year. That it's not playing the brand on the other side of the field this year, and that's what led to a lot of those ups and downs a year ago in hindsight. But it kind of happened. It kind of happened again on Friday. So where do we expect Matt Rhule to go with his comments? Not physically. What is Matt Rhule going to? Here's a better way to phrase this. What is Matt Rhule going to have to say today on Monday at his weekly press conference? Number one, we'll get an update on Rocco Spindler, the right guard for Nebraska, who went out in the first quarter with a hand or finger injury. Sounded pretty serious. He was hospitalized on Friday night, and It could be long term. It could be short term. Like he could be done for the year. We'll get some clarity from Rhule today.
Yeah, I think you'll hear him say, basically that we'll be okay. He'll give, you'll ask him the same question you just asked me, and he'll probably say the same thing. Like, we're still a good team. We just got to figure out how to be a version of ourselves all the time. It's going to be a lot of like calming the masses, because as we always say, he knows where the wind's blowing. He knows what the conversation is about his team. He knows when they lose, it turns into a pretty weird place around here. So they'll say, everybody chill out would be my guess in summation.
Any Penn State talk today?
Does the question even get asked today? I mean, probably not, right?
In what context would it be asked today?
I don't think there's any proper context to bring it up today. So probably not.
Aside from the possibility that Nebraska players and as a program, that Nebraska's focus was on the wrong thing last week, I don't even know where you go with it.
Okay. That's a potential angle. I mean, in hindsight, were you distracted? That question.
That's a hard question to answer right after the game. And I asked him what he thought about his players' focus, and he could choose to take that wherever he went with it on Friday night. And he said he didn't want to make any excuses and that Minnesota deserved credit. And then I did specifically ask Emmett Johnson about if the Rhule conversation bothered Nebraska players during the week. And of course he said no. Like what that's what you're going to get from them, even if it was an issue.
No doubt. So lot to figure out both today and then tomorrow when the coordinators speak as well. Good to be back. Thanks for being with us today. Thank you for making Locked On Nebraska your first listen. For your second listen, check out Locked On Big Ten with Craig. He covers, of course, the Big Ten. Find it on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.